thank you everybody for joining us today. I like to start at the top of the hour. Hopefully you can hear me now. I'm trying to toggle between a lot of different systems here. So again, welcome to Demystifying LXPs, Making Sense of the Noise. My name is Cara North. I'm a Senior Learning Experience Designer at The Ohio State University. And I'd like to let my co-host also introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today. I'm Shan and I'm Senior Director Technology at Origin Learning. I also head the team who developed the Fractal LXP. So I'll be co-hosting with Cara today. So thank you, Cara. You can continue now.
Okay, great. Thanks, Shan. So thank you all for joining us. And I'd really like to start by kicking off with just a conversation. And what I'd like for you to think about is I'd really be interested in you just taking a quick moment to reflect. Now, I'm assuming everyone that's here today has participated in everybody here today that's participating in the webinar has at least one experience, either throughout your academic career or your professional career with e-learning. Now, I know it may be easier for you to share about your worst e-learning experience, but I'd like to start by just asking you to just take a quick moment, and I want you to think about the best e-learning experience that you've ever had. And what I'd like for you to do is, after you kind of have in your mind what that best experience is, go ahead and just share in the chat, and you want to select to all attendees, share a little bit about that. What made it memorable for you? What made it a really good experience for you? So if you'd be kind enough just to share that in the chat, I'll highlight a couple of the different responses because I'm really interested to see what you think a quality e-learning experience is like. What are the characteristics of it? What made it so memorable for you? So if you just be kind enough in the chat, send a message to everyone and just let us know what made it a really good experience. So Heather, thank you for kicking us off. It's always somebody's worst nightmare to not receive anything. So Heather says it's relevant and interactive and practical. Great. Tracy says it was engaging and easy to remember the information afterwards with not too much thrown at her at one time. Absolutely. We have good graphics and a short course. Watching a video on YouTube. Hey, Christiana, that tangibly shows me what I want to know. Hey, Helena, good to see you too. Oh, they're coming in real quick now. Helena says that it was a branching scenario. Yeah, so it sounds like we have a lot of different experiences here. Looks like we have emotion, we have about the different UX. So I took a risk, guys, asking you this question because I really thought I would see a pattern in what you've said. So I'm seeing engagement, I'm seeing, game, I'm seeing scenario, I'm seeing it very kind of relevant to you, and you're focusing on that experience piece, which is exactly what I want you to do. But what I find really interesting in your responses is that nobody cheered for your delivery method. I didn't see a single person that said they loved their system. Nobody said, you know what, that LMS, that just really made it memorable for me. Nobody at least felt comfortable enough sharing that they felt like you wanted to express your enthusiasm for the way that you receive your e-learning content, or at least no one was brave enough to mention that. So again, I took a risk, but again, I didn't see any of this love being put out there, and I understand, because you probably feel more like this, right? You're probably really frustrated with that delivery mode of your e-learning content. Now, if you create e-learning content, if you're an instructional designer or you're part of a team that does that, you know exactly how time-consuming it can be and how much of a labor of love it is to create a really great experience, much like what you all described a few moments ago. And you do all of that, and then you put it into a system that's not so great. And Helena, you're right on point. The LMS never does come to mind. Now, last year, I'm not sure if you all know who Mike Taylor is, but he's somebody in the learning development space. He gave a keynote at an ATD conference, and he made a really interesting comment. He actually asked by show of hands, how many people log in daily to their learning management system to see what new content pops up? And can you guess what the response was to that? Not a single hand went up. Exactly, Christiana, right on point. Yeah, not a single hand went up. And this was a group, this conference was for learning and development professionals. So if we aren't doing this ourselves in learning development, why do we even think there's a small possibility that our training population will do the same? So I'm curious, I'll go ahead and share a quick poll here. Just kind of curious about your interest so far in just basically like what you're looking for in an LXP. So I've got that poll up right there. If you just be kind enough to answer that. And you may not even know what it is at this point, so this might be a little early for this poll, but just to get a ballpark of like what you're interested in, you think an LXP may be able to do for you and your organization. So if you'd be kind enough just to take a look at that. We've got a couple others. Yeah, thank you guys. You're very quick at responding to those polls. Very quick, so thank you. We'll leave it up for just a few more moments here. And all of these options here, specifically Shan, when we get to his point, he's going to be talking a lot about the features of a good LXP and get you there. So, all right, I'll go ahead and end this out. So thank you all for that. And we will go right ahead because I think it's really important we just take a moment and hit that back button to explore how on earth we got to this point, that we really value obviously e-learning and we value kind of the flexibility and possibilities of it, but where we have these systems that no one on this particular webinar admitted that they liked. Actually, Helena made probably the golden nugget of the day. The LMS never comes to mind in this particular point. So again, how did we get to this point that we have poor relationships with these content delivery platforms? So if we go back in the time machine, hit the back button way back, the first generation of e-learning platforms, and I'm going to say from like 1993 on, these were kind of like these black box mechanisms. And when I say black box, I mean that like for the most part, it was like the shroud of secrecy to access the data, even if it was tracked in the first place. And for the most part, these systems use proprietary formats to manage courses directly. You could commonly find a one-to-one mapping between systems and courses with very limited user tracking, again, if any. And these platforms focused on the delivery and interoperability of content designed for a specific purpose, like a course. So essentially, again, these systems suffered by not being able to work between different systems at a content level. And the standard, if you can remember this, if you were around in those times with the kind of the first version of an LMS, it used AICC. And so essentially that was just a common communication API to be included into the content to support the functionalities such as notifications indicating the beginning and end of a particular e-learning content. And again, these first generation platforms, they really provided for the future evolution via the support of the sharing content in this way. And so an example, if you're looking for some of these different examples of you know, what some of these systems were, there was one called WebCT and another one called Blackboard that was kind of popular during this first generation. All right, so let's hop and go to the second generation. I guess that'd be more like hitting the next button on this trip down memory lane. This is like from 1999 to 2014. Now this system, this you know, range really expanded on the predecessor successes and began addressing some of the failures. So again, WebCT and Blackboard were still in the game here, and Moodle was another one that kind of came to mind in the learning management space. Now, in terms of an evolution, what they did instead of that it was more of a shift toward architectural design. So that module-based system that a lot of us still know and recognize, they felt that that was kind of needed for this somatic change instead of it being just this black box of content. And so they began focus not only on the sharing of the content, but also sharing the learning objects and the sequences, and again, the learner information. So probably the standard you know most from this one is the shareable content object reference model, or SCORM. And essentially it's a great example of that shift between that black box model of the first generation to something that's a little bit more user friendly, at least for the teams that manage it, maybe not always the user, which we'll get to here in a minute. And then another significant development was that the second generation of platform was kind of the first to embrace the services principle, exposing certain aspects of the functionality externally. And as these designs became more modular, it was easier for platforms to integrate new functionality as it arose. And in some cases, web services were designed to expose a limited set of functionality supported from within. So the LMS community actually made an increased move towards separating the content from the tools and also the learner information. Now this is key. Put a pin in this. We'll come back to this little piece here in a moment. And now again, these systems, they're not entirely learner centric, but they did have that strong focus on the learner administration, or that course management piece rather than the learner. So we took kind of a step back. And so now let's go to where we currently are. I'm going to say from 2015 to today. And right here, right now, there are tons of options on the table when it comes to your delivery method and hubs for your e-learning. Now, you may still be using a learning management system. You also have other options available like a learning experience platform, or LXP. You may also be coding X API statements into your e-learning and using data from your learning record store, or LRS. And you may be using live virtual classrooms. It really just kind of depends on if you love what you currently have. You know, it just kind of depends. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what you currently have. So if you wanted to share in the chat like what your organization does, I think that would also be beneficial to the people in attendance today, just to kind of get a pulse check on what is currently out there. All right, so we talked a little bit about how we got to where we are. And I'd like to give a shout out to Josh Burson. So Josh Burson is the founder and principal of Burson by Deloitte. To me, one of the main people to follow, to just think a little bit about where we're going in workforce and kind of this future of work. And he's really made an impact, especially when we talk about e-learning and training. And I'll let you just kind of look and digest that quote a little bit. I love it so much because I feel like a lot of times it depends on your organization and how it's structured, that often the people are left out of the equation. I mean, how many times have you seen in your organization rapidly adopt something just to see it bust? I've seen it a ton of times in just the various places that I've worked in my career. And while technology is great if it fits, often people, again, are left out of that equation. Now, I did just want to briefly share this with you. So I just think it's really important to just have a nice reminder of why we do what we do in learning and development. It's about helping people perform better. And too often I do feel like that's missing out of the equation. Okay, so let's go to another poll really quickly. I'm curious about parameters. So based on what we've said, and again, I know we haven't gotten too deep into it, but what are you interested in about an LXP? So if you were looking for that, we talked a little bit about what you're interested in. So yeah, integration capabilities, I think is a big one that we'll talk about here in a bit. And again, Shan is going to do a great deep dive for everyone. I learned so much just working with Shan on this presentation that I didn't know. So I'm really excited about all the great information he is going to share. So just leave this up for just another moment or two. And I'm going to check the chat. Ah, Gretchen. Gretchen uses D2L. I'm also familiar with Desire to Learn, working in a university system. So I know that that one has been around for a while. So it's good to know that it's still being used. And Judy, I'm also familiar with Cornerstone. That's another big popular one as well. Yeah, feel free to share those systems out in the chat again, so that way you can kind of see and connect with people that may be using similar systems to you. Okay, let's go ahead and end that poll. Thank you so much for sharing your insights there. We appreciate it. And I'd like you to just take a moment just to look at this particular graphic here. And this is another one that Josh Burson and his team has created about the modern learner. And I just want you to take a moment and look at it. And as you're looking at it and digesting it, I just want to pull out some of the things that I've seen in this graphic. And again, I'd like for you to share your reactions to it as well with everybody here in the webinar. So for me, the biggest kind of two themes, one is getting to the point, period. So people are busy, right? And I'm not sure if you're familiar with a conference kind of model called Disrupt HR, but there's a gentleman named Clint Clarkson, who's also a friend of mine in learning development, that in his talk about Disrupt HR, he said something that I love, so I'm totally paraphrasing here, but he says that so many people hate training that they'd rather work than take a course. And I know I've dealt with that again in the various organizations I've been in, that people do not want to go to training. It's almost like it's a punitive thing a lot of times, and they put it off and put it off and put it off. So, and again, I've been guilty of putting off courses myself. Now, this busy factor is often due to workers doing more with less and having less time and resources to do more work than ever before. So yeah, Dahlia, it looks like you say overextended. I completely agree with you. I think that that is definitely one of the issues. And another thing that I kind of take away from this graphic is that there's point of need learning that needs to meet learners where they are. And many employees access answers to on-the-job questions through search engines, right? I mean, Google's probably your best friend at this point. I'm more of a DuckDuckGo kind of gal, but whatever. And I'm just curious, like, when's the last time you've used a search engine to answer a question at your job? I do it daily, and I'm sure a lot of us here on the call, you do it daily because it's readily available at that point of need. Now imagine if you got to access your own instructional content that easily. And I feel like that is the power of an on-demand performance support. And again, according to this graphic and other research out there, I feel like that's what a lot of people in the workforce, they're looking for. All right, so we've had a couple questions about it. So what is an LXP? Basically, it is a learning experience platform that is a content delivery system that can be used as an addition to your learning management system, or in some cases, it can replace a learning management system. It just kind of depends on your needs. Now, the content can be curated or developed by your organization, again, depending on the system. Some allow it, some don't. And another feature is that based on how someone does in a content module or the subject that they select, recommendations can be given to that person. So you may hear this called personalized learning. You hear that term a lot when you talk about LXP. Another feature of many LXPs is that it is a SaaS, or service as a software. Now, I feel like that distinction is important because it can often provide a more agile delivery method for content such as pushes, which we'll get to here in a moment. Now, again, Shan's going to dive in deeper into examples in the future, but I do think it's important, again, to iterate that an LXP is not a magical bullet. It's not going to solve every organizational challenge in your particular organization. So I just want to preface that by saying, you know, it's not a miracle worker. You still have to do, you know, strategy, and there's still a lot of considerations that you need to consider before adopting. But one thing that I hope you do, again, take away is that the technology won't help you at all if you don't get buy-in from people, plain and simple. So you need to know that training population. You really need to utilize your organizational resources to determine if an LXP is the right fit for you. All right. Now, I don't know how many people remember, gosh, like maybe 8, 9 years ago, the commercial campaign from Apple, I'm a Mac and I'm a PC. But I've decided to try to take a spin on that just to kind of go through kind of the differences between an LMS and an LXP. So humor me here. So I'm an LMS and I'm an LXP. And I'm going to try to draw connections between the two and kind of compare and contrast, if you will, between them. Okay. So here's a concept, and Christiana, I'm glad you're here because I know that you love this too, of the sludge versus the nudge. And so let's start with the learning management system. Often learning management system user interfaces, they get a pretty bad reputation because honestly, they're kind of bad sometimes. The concept of having to log into this monolithic system to gain access to new knowledge, it's a pain in many cases. And often courses have to be assigned to you by a manager. And if you're going off looking for a course, let's say in leadership development, sometimes you have to have the right naming convention, tags. You have to sometimes request permission prior to enrolling. And LMS logins are even put behind two-factor authentications, asking the question, are you sure you want to learn today? Whereas LXPs, they really, if they're set up appropriately, they can really kind of be that nudge. And the nudge is just basically kind of a reminder of a learning experience. Now, they often allow for self-enrollment if someone wants to learn it at all, and encourage people to browse the system and see what's available. It actually encourages like that kind of, I wonder what else is out there that I'm interested in. And it can also provide a snapshot of where someone currently is in the company and really give them the tools necessary to learn in order to grow professionally. So if you have somebody there that is interested in being a leader in the next 3 to 5 years, they may be able to access courses a little bit more easily to get them ready if they want to get a promotion. So this nudge versus sludge, this is not my doing. I'm a fan of the Freakonomics podcast, and there's an economist actually came up with this, Richard Thaler, and he defines a nudge as a small feature of the environment that influences our choices, but allows us to do anything that we want. So again, we have that kind of influence, but we still ultimately have the choice if we want to take something or not take something. And he has a great example of what he defines sludge is. And he says it's basically the gunk that comes out from a byproduct. And he gave an example on the podcast about he wanted to read a review of a book that he had. And, if you had a subscription and they automatically renew that subscription, but to unsubscribe that, you have to give them a call. And then not only do you have to call them, but you have to call a different country. And you have to call during that country's business hours, not on a toll-free line. And then you have to give them 2 weeks notice. That is sludge. And I feel like a lot of times we can feel like we're in sludge factories. I mean, again, we create all these learning products and then hide them behind these systems that just don't make it easy for people to get in and get what they need. Or we create things that aren't optimized for tablets or phones, that kind of stuff. So, and I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, you got into learning development because you like the nudge versus the sludge, right? So you're really interested in being a part of someone's success, seeing those light bulbs light up over someone's head, really helping people to do their jobs better and grow. The bottom line is sludge doesn't do this. Sludge is why so many people hate e-learning, presentations, and all of it. So my challenge to you is fight the sludge and advocate for the end user. All right, and often LXPs, again, can work within your existing systems. So LXPs, they have the ability to connect to and integrate with existing systems and tools implemented at your organization. And they can stand alone, but they typically have multiple APIs to complement your existing system. Whereas the good old learning management system, a lot of times it works alone. Now, there have been some more vendors that have came out recently, especially with their own LXP products to add into their LMS, because again, their other LXPs don't natively fit in to those systems too often. So with that, I've finished my portion of the presentation. So I will pull up another poll and transition over to Shan as he takes us a little bit deeper down information about the LXPs. Let me go ahead and pull up this last poll here, get more information here about kind of like where you're at when it comes to budget considerations. Like if you were to think about spending money for an LXP, kind of where are you at if that's something that you're interested in?
Okay, thank you, Cara. I'll take over from here. Thanks for that summary and introduction. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining with us today so that we can explore what is LXP. So Cara already covered, a good introduction. So what I'm going to do is to do a little bit deep dive on how do you differentiate an LMS and LXP. So some of the things which is emerging, and LXP itself is an emerging technology or terminology you can call. So the first thing you will notice is the UI and UX between LMS and LXP. When it comes to an LXP, it is learner first, whereas the traditional learning management system, we always focus on an administrator or the L&D department's needs, so that you can push learning, you track people, you get reports, whereas learners' needs comes at last. Whereas LXP is actually a flip where learner comes first. And also you see most of these LXPs are also mobile first. The reason is because when you put learner first, the trend is people are using more of their mobile devices than their desktop. And also they are always on the move. So you want to cater to mobiles. So a mobile app is a mandatory thing when it comes to an LXP. And obviously, the LXPs are really fun to use, I would say. The reason behind is, again, it's learner first. So you want the learner to come back every time and keep using it, so that the LXPs are often very user-friendly, and it will basically give you what you want in very few clicks. So that is also very, very important. And when it comes to content, as we have already seen, it is basically small snippets of content as and when you need it. It is also called micro-learning. So you will see more of this when it comes to an LXP. And also the LXP supports any content type. It will not say, okay, give me only AICC, only SCOM. You have a video, you have an audio, you have a set of images or questionnaire. So the LXP is pretty much flexible that way. It integrates very well into different type of content. And also you can keep content within the system and outside the system. It should work well. For instance, you basically have a set of videos hosted somewhere else. The LXP should be able to make use of that. So you don't have to move content always into an LXP. And also, in some cases, it accepts user-generated content where you needed it. That is also another characteristics character you can notice. Then we come to the navigation, the learning paths, because you want learners to go in a specific path. So when it comes to LXP, you always see there are logical learning paths that they need to follow, which is pretty much customized for their need. For instance, somebody wants to get a certification or moving from point A to point B. Even though in learning management systems, these paths are available in the name of curriculums or learning paths, but these are all kind of defined and pretty rigid. You are pushed into that learning path. Here you can choose your learning path, and there are systems where you can even configure your learning paths. And assessments are also a part, whereas which will again give you basically, if you are completing a portion of the learning path, there'll be an assessment. Then you are given badges at every single point. So you can notice that there are badges given to you which you can store, and you can even display it for your colleagues or your peers. So badges are another feature you will see in LXPs. And also most of these are gamified. You will see kind of who is getting more badges, or how you are compared to the other learner. So all these you will be able to see in LXPs, not so much in an LMS. And also LXPs get collaborative when you will be able to connect with experts, and you'll be able to connect with fellow learners. So all these would be possible. You can even read blogs from the experts. There are systems where you can post yourself, but mostly you'll receive all this updated information from the experts. And also LXPs will allow you to provide your feedback in the form of rating. I mean, you can rate the course, and let's say you are searching for a course, you can decide which one to take based on the user rating. That way it gets more transparent. So I'm not saying LXP need to have all these. There are systems will have some of these, they won't have some of these, but these are the things which are kind of getting added to a system. And when we call something as an LXP, look for these. That is what I'm trying to say here. So that basically explains what will be an LXP. So let me move on to the next slide. So what I'm going to cover now is, now that we know, okay, the characteristics of LXP, let's take a step back and see how we landed here. I mean, what started this whole transformation? Why do we need something like this? Whereas there is LMS. We have been using learning management systems for so many years. So what started this whole LXP journey? So in my opinion, there are two things I can say. The Netflix phenomena, where the accessing content becomes more and more intuitive, and you go there and there is a huge repository, but the system should know what you're looking for based on what you saw yesterday, or what your friends are seeing, or what is trending now. What is the new movie? So Netflix experience is given to people, and people are getting used to it, and now they expect Netflix everywhere, and they want to see Netflix in every system they go and see. And the first people who understood this and capitalized on is the MOOC players. So the massive open online courses offered by players like Degreed, Coursera, and Udemy kind of people. So this is where you can see the focus shifted from learning management systems, where the administrators are pushing content and they don't care what the learners feel, to learners decide what they want to learn. So when you come into one of these platforms and you are a learner, now you will decide what you want to learn next. So then it is for the platform to make it more intuitive and interesting for you, so that you learn what you need. So these players started replicating Netflix kind of an interface, where you see what you are supposed to see, or based on your behavior, based on what you're looking for. They'll ask you questions like, what is your interest? Tell me some keywords, and based on that, they will customize and give things to you. So these people started this trend. Now, there are people who learn outside using one of these platforms like Coursera or Udemy, and the next day morning they go to office and they open their LMS and they see the difference, right? It's totally different, two different kind of experiences. There is one system really concerned about what I want to see. The other system is like, this is what you have to learn. Please go ahead and complete it, and then you get a dull looking certificate. So this is where the entire switch would have happened. That is my take. And there are systems that took advantage of this trend. So there are some examples I've given here, but one of the things I would like to highlight is Trailhead, which is from Salesforce. So Salesforce came up with this idea of trails, and for each of their certifications or a kind of user roles in Salesforce, you will have a trail configured, and each trail will have a set of modules, and you'll have so many badges assigned to it. So what happened is people would go in there and they will get hooked onto any of these trails, and they will give you badges for every single step you take, and they have already reached more than 5 million badges, which means see the difference here, where you basically follow LXP a kind of a feature where badges are issued at every step. There are 5 million badges, whereas in an LMS, you have to push people to come back. You have to send reminders. You have to ask them to come back to complete a course. Even though it is important for their career advancement, you have to keep telling people, please come back, because the experience is not so great. Whereas something like a Trailhead has 5 million badges, which means it is giving people what they are looking for. It is gamified. So that's where you see the difference. And these first movers actually brought in this entire concept. And obviously, the learning experience platform terminology is coined a little bit later. And we are going to see this go further. But this is how it all started. So with that, I think we can move on. So what I would like to cover here is, as we are also having our own Fractal learning experience platform, and from the beginning, we are following these trends, and we started incorporating all these features. But what I would like to share here is, based on our experience, who are all those people who can take these platforms, right? Who are looking for LXPs right now. So one thing I already covered, the Salesforce example, where people who has these SaaS products, for them, the more users coming into their platform, the more product number of licenses they can sell. So Salesforce would want a lot of people certified on Salesforce product, so that their customers will keep on buying their product. So as far as product organizations are concerned, learning is not a cost center for them. It is mostly marketing expense. So what happens is they drive learning for proliferation. In that case, their learner is more and more important. They want to give the best experience to their learners. So the learning paths can be the certification paths. They also want to integrate labs and other systems. So they basically create virtual labs for their product, and they integrate it closely with these learning paths. And also they use it for customers and partners onboarding, which means the system should be outside their firewall. So they can take a call on, okay, I don't want my LMS, which is meant for my employee learning. I can take up an LXP and I can use it. So product organizations are taking the first step. They are more experimental in this area. So they come out and start using Fractal or any other LXP. We also see people who needed extended enterprise, which is again either a product organization or any other organization. They have training that needs to be delivered, but it needs to be monetized as well. So they are looking for a system which is accessible outside and also have features like e-commerce, and they want to give the power to learners. So I don't want to decide, okay, this is how you learn. I just want to put out certain training products, and you come and pay and you use it. So these kind of use cases, they are looking for more LXPs than LMSs, because a learning experience platform is really capable of pulling more learners into the system. Rather than using an LMS, they would prefer to use an LXP. And also training providers. Let's say you have a training product that you want to sell, and you are an expert, or you are an expert organization, and you want to deliver training. Usually you see you basically customize something like Moodle and start using it. But LXPs are a best option that provides better learning experience. You allow your learner to configure their learning path so that you don't have to set up a learning path. What you have to do is you have to put out all your learning objects. Let's say you have 100 videos that you created using your expertise. You can put out all 100 videos in your LXP and probably configure few learning paths, but let the learners decide what the learning path they want to take. And also you want to recommend learning. You want to recommend certain paths or courses for learners. The LXPs are more capable of doing that than traditional learning management systems. So this is what we see as someone who develop and deliver LXP. This is the trend we see at this moment. Maybe it might change in future, but these are the use cases as of today who can benefit from LXPs. So quickly, we have, I mean, a poll is coming up. You can, yeah, so you can answer this. If you are interested in Fractal, we can, I mean, get in touch with you offline, but please respond to this so that we'll give you a few moments and then move on. Okay, thank you for that. And so now that we know, I mean, what makes an LXP and what are the typical use cases at this point, LXP is more suitable. Let's talk about what is the immediate future looking like, right? So we are always, I mean, we have done a lot of comparison between learning management systems and LXPs, but let's be fair, the learning management systems are still relevant when it comes to large organizations where you have a lot of training needs to be delivered and tracked, whereas compliance training, which is mandatory, everybody needs to take it. So people are still buying learning management systems. So they are still relevant. The LXPs are not going to wipe off LMSs from earth tomorrow, but the learning management systems are having their places. And we also have the challenge of the legacy content. There's so much content out there which is already developed using Articulate, Storyline, Captivate, which is hosted, SCORM AACC, and multiple versions of SCORM. So this problem, I wouldn't say is not, it will stop LXPs from coming up pretty quickly because the LMS is more capable of handling legacy content than LXPs. And also the organizational maturity, the maturity of learners, as well as the maturity of L&D teams in terms of coming up with processes so that they can, I mean, modify the methodologies, the strategies, so that they can use LXPs in the place of LMSs. It will take some more time. And the other one, I mean, what I feel would be a challenge would be the data privacy concerns. The LXPs, for them to give you accurate recommendations, it requires more and more data about the employee, about their performance or their career path. Considering that we are having this GDPR kind of regulations coming up, we need to wait and see what kind of impact it has in utilizing data. So that will also be a kind of struggle for LXPs to cross. But I would say the LMS is still relevant in some cases. So in the immediate future, you will still have LMS players, I mean, catering to those needs. But what I see will be happening immediately is people are moving towards a hybrid approach. So I will have LMS for those areas where LMS is relevant, and I will still have a second system, which is called an LXP, for certain areas. For example, the extended enterprise use case I talked about, whereas I want to offer training to my customers and partners who are not behind the single sign-on or firewalls, but they are outside my firewall. I can basically have a SaaS-based system for them, and I need to give the best user experience for them so that they can pay for my training. If this is the use case, you will go for LXPs. Then you can see these two systems coexist. So this is what you will see as a trend for some more time and for the immediate future. So then what happens, I mean, if you go beyond that, right? And it is anybody's guess. I mean, LXP itself is evolving. It can go in any direction. But what will determine that direction is these buzzwords which are happening in the market. So artificial intelligence and machine learning, I mean, you'll be hearing it. I mean, in all your mailers, you go browse any website. I mean, this is what is discussed out there. And for a valid reason, because this is changing every industry and it is going to change learning as well. So what I feel, LXP is moving in the direction of finding out what the learner wants and deliver exactly that. And what else can offer that more than an AI or machine learning algorithm? So what will happen is this machine learning algorithms can predict industry trends and tell you, okay, this is where the entire industry is going. This is how you have to configure your learning path. It can configure your learning path. It can, I mean, give you career guidance, and that is where we are heading. And also, it will give you more and more personalized recommendations and deep insights. So with AI incorporated, the learner, right now we expect the learner to basically make certain choices, assuming that the learner know that what they want. Whereas in future, you may not know what you need because the industry is changing so rapidly. So you need an algorithm to decide for you. So it might look like science fiction, but it is happening in many of the industries. It might happen in the area of LXP as well. And also the other area where you will see some traction is in terms of blockchain. So blockchains, I mean, we know, I mean, from Bitcoin kind of digital currencies use blockchain because they are the most secured, technology, and it create immutable ledgers. In our case, what is a ledger? In a learning management system or a learning experience platform, scenario, a ledger is more like, let's say you have a learner transcript and you want to protect it and transfer across systems. That way, blockchain can be used and it can create immutable transcripts. So any transcript which is created, then it becomes like a central transcript that cannot be modified. The second would be, I mean, if you extend it, it will give you secured badges and certifications so that these can be protected and nobody can, tinker with it or change it. So blockchain can have an impact in LXPs. And also in terms of UX trends, right now, LXPs are still on screen, you are viewing it. Who knows, I mean, this experience can become use of VR or AR technology. So you can walk into the platform and start learning and experiencing stuff. And also you have voice agents, like, right, how Netflix triggered this whole, demand for learner experience. A voice agent like a Siri or Google Assistant, people are getting used to that, and now they'll expect the same when you come to learn. So an LXP without a voice agent may not be very intuitive for learners going forward. And obviously the wearables, so we need to wait and see where it will take. So you have all these systems that you can wear on your body, and that will track your biometric and all those things. It can be used in many ways. I think that will also have an impact. I know this is, right now looks like we're talking science fiction, but it will happen very soon. So I think with that, we are coming towards the end, Apple. So what we will do now before we go to the end, We will take up some questions. We already have noted some questions and answer, but if you have more questions, you can, I mean, type it in the comment section. We will try to answer that. So one question we received is, why would you want to use both LMS and LXP instead of using one over the other? I think I answered it. Whereas there is LMS is still relevant, and LXP cannot come into that realm because of its nature. The way it is designed, it is learner centric. Whereas there are still certain areas where learning administrators should be given the power. A good example is compliance training. So I would say LMS is going to exist for some more time, and LMS will also metamorph into LXPs. That is what will happen. They will change the UI so that it can become an LXP. Yeah, so the other question is, what is stopping LMS providers building LXPs? I would say yes, they will, do it, and they're already doing it. Um, the LMS providers are already adding LXP-like features or additional modules they are providing. So they will also move towards this direction. So it is not always that the new LXP providers will emerge. There is a possibility LMS providers will also move into this space. So in terms of LXPs, one question is about the pricing. Do we have LXPs priced similar to the LMS? Right now, it is very difficult to answer that. LXPs are at the initial stages, but mostly LXPs are cloud-based. The pricing model is different and usually lesser than the LMS. I mean, I would say they're priced less, but I wouldn't have exact numbers at this point. So the some examples of use cases. I mean, if you can get in touch with one of us, I mean, we can talk about it. One is, as I said, the Salesforce use case is Trailhead is one LXP. I would say they have already successfully used. Okay. The other question is, the LXP is capable of providing user ratings and feedback like e-commerce websites. Yes, they are, and that is one of the features that you expect from an LXP. So one question is about where is the cloud located? Is it about Fractal? Yeah, in case of Fractal, right now we kind of provide the cloud according to the customer's location. So it is located in the US and in Asia. And if Canada is a requirement, then we will look at the data privacy laws and see what can be done. Okay, any other? So how LXP handles the feedback mechanism? In most cases, the feedback is pretty generic, and also in terms of a star rating. So you give a rating and also add a comment. It may not be as detailed as an LMS feedback at this point, but that can be incorporated as a link within when you design the curriculum or design the course structure. So does LXP work on user input or user activity? Can you elaborate that? I mean, it's Pavan Kalyan. So I mean, I didn't get your question. If you can elaborate it, I'll try to answer that. Okay, the personalized recommendation, is it based on user inputs or based on certain course I take up? It is a combination of multiple things. I mean, it depends on the algorithm that they define. It's usually understands your learning pattern. It also sees similar users, what they are taking up. Let's say you take course A, and what kind of courses other people are taking who are taking the same course, and it will do the recommendation. So that is how it will come up with. As I said, in future, it will be more AI driven. The recommendations comes from multiple sources of data. Does LXPs provide CMS-like feature? Yes, I mean, they provide CMS-like features, but I don't think how much workflow you can do with that. They will have a pretty much standard workflow, but this is, it depends on the LXP that you use. But they pretty much try to standardize the content development process. So, I mean, you have to explore and see whether that particular LXP has the features that you're looking for. Okay, can users or students upload content to the LXP? I think when you say content in terms of, let's say you get an assignment, you submit the assignment back, there are features available like that, but not the learning content. In LXPs, the content are often curated and often provided by experts. So far, I haven't seen they directly take students' content and deliver it to other students. Maybe some kind of curative mechanism will be put in place, but not a direct share. Yeah, can we monitor the user-generated content? It depends on the platform. If it allows, definitely it should be curated because LXP is all about learner experience. You need to ensure that there is quality, so you will be able to monitor it. Okay, we have last few minutes, so we are going to launch the final poll. So we would like to know your feedback about this particular session so that we can take it and improve upon for our further sessions. Yeah, meanwhile, you can even post if there are any questions on the comment box. So, Cara, do you have any closing comments?
I guess the only closing comments I'd have is thank you everybody for your time today. Hopefully you got a little bit more information about LXPs, and remember, fight for your end users because nobody else does a lot of times, and you're in a good position a lot of times to think about them. So don't just implement technology for technology's sake. Think about the impact it has on people.
Thank you, Cara. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And we will hope to meet you again with another topic on LXP with more information, more in-depth information. So stay tuned. Thank you very much.